My heart's in the Highlands, my heart is not here. My heart's in the Highlands, a-chasing the deer, chasing the wild deer, following the road. My heart's in the Highlands, wherever I go. Now my Highlands were the Pocono Mountains of Pennsylvania. Every summer, as soon as school was out, my father would load up the car with blankets and food for a couple of weeks, everything you need to camp, and we would head for the mountains for Naomi Lake. It was a jewel of a lake, just nestled in the mountains. When you drove in the private road that took you on one side of the lake, you would pass the Naomi Lake House, which was a small hotel that offered a place to live and 3 meals a day. And you went on a little bit farther and there was a big pavilion, 2 stories high. The basement was dressing rooms and all. The top was a dance floor or a place for a play in the summer. And it faced a man-made sandy beach. And if you went a little farther, you came to our campsite. And from then on, clear around that whole lake, all the way around to the other side and back to the dam, there was nothing but woods. It was wild and it was wonderful. Now we stopped at the rental garage where all our tents and things were, and Dad had arranged for a truck and a driver, and we helped him load everything into the truck, and then we went to our campsite. We had 4 wooden platforms. The great big one was for my parents' tent. It had a high center pole, and it was divided into 4 rooms. Bedroom for my parents' kitchen, living room, and dining room. And then outside was another wooden platform with a picnic table, and over that we put a fly to keep off the sun and the rain. And then there was the big fire pit where we had bonfires at night. And then there were the 2 smaller tents, one for my brother and one for my sister and I. Well, we really worked hard to get everything back in place, put the beds into our tents and then make them, and help Mother put the stuff in the cupboard for the kitchen. Finally, she gave us each a sandwich and said, "Now you're free." And were we happy. We ran into our tents, got on our suits. My brother and sister, they ran right back down the road to the bathing beach. I took the little path down to the lake and I swam there. And yes, that water was not even 65 degrees, but it didn't bother me. So the summer had begun. Now that was the summer that I made up my mind that I would learn to be a woodsman. I had studied the Joseph Altshuler books all winter long and gotten them out of the library as often as the librarian would let me have them. You know, the 5 heroes, those woodsmen in that book, they knew everything an Indian knew and more because they had studied with all the different tribes for one adventure or another. For example, they had pictures of the footprints of all the animals to be found in our woods. And then they showed you how you could tell whether that animal, that bear, had gone by 20 minutes ago or 2 or 3 days. There was so much knowledge. So every morning I would get up early, take my wet bathing suit off the hook on the tent pole, put it on, and go down to the lake. Quietly, I would start to swim along the shore. As the sun came up, all the animals would come down to drink. Everything, even little quail and turkeys and rabbits and possums and raccoons and foxes, and of course deer and even an occasional bear. They never saw me. I was so quiet. I'd go about a mile, and then I would come back. And by this time, the animals were gone. So I would go ashore where they had been and study their tracks. Oh, I was getting really good. But what I really wanted to learn, and it was very hard, was to walk like an Indian. Did you know they don't walk like we do? We put our heel down first. Somehow they put their toe down and then the heel. And they can walk through the woods without crackling a leaf or snapping a twig. Or they can run silently that way, and you can be very close to them and not realize that a whole tribe has passed by. Well, did I ever work? It's easier said than done. But finally, I could go through the woods without crackling leaves or snapping twigs, and it was time for my big plan. I waited for a bright moonlit night. I knew that if I went uphill through these woods, at the top there was a high mountain meadow where a whole herd of deer liked to feed at night. Silently, for I went from the shadow of one tree to the next, right up that hill. I never crackled a leaf or snapped a twig. Finally, I was almost to the edge of the woods and could see, yes, my herd of deer was right there. And they were coming and grazing toward me, just as I had planned. And the little fawns were leaping about and having a good time, but the adults were all just coming closer and closer to where I stood in the shadow. Finally, one doe was close enough. I waited a moment, and then I put my hand right out and I touched her. Oh, I'll never forget the feel of her fur under my hand. But of course, she leaped up in the air and turned to run. But if deer can laugh, she did. And the whole herd, with their white tails flying, ran away from me, but not far. They soon turned around and started to graze back in my direction. Over 80 years have passed since that night, and any time I think of touching my deer, I am just filled with joy. Yes, my heart is still in the Highlands.